did it. Thank you for everything, guys.
Well, good morning. It is great to be back in Laredo. We just had a terrific roundtable with law enforcement, community leaders, and stakeholders here in Laredo, talking about the border crisis that is playing out. I'm here with Congressman Chip Roy, Congressman Nancy Mace from South Carolina. Last night we met with Border Patrol leadership, went out on midnight patrol with the Border Patrol, and then this morning we're meeting with leaders including the mayor, the county judge, the chief of police, and listening to stories about the price that Laredo and South Texas are paying because of the immigration crisis. The very real price in terms of resources, the very real price in terms of crime, the very real price in terms of strain on the education system, on the healthcare system, in terms of the shortage of ICU beds, driven in significant part by spikes in COVID coming from unconstrained illegal immigration. We have a border crisis in our country. It's a crisis that South Texas is on the front lines of and pays the price, but it impacts the entire country. And what is so frustrating, what is so maddening, is that this crisis is man-made. This didn't have to be happening. This crisis is the result of 3 political decisions made by the Biden administration. In the first week in office, Joe Biden, number 1, immediately halted construction of the border wall. Number 2, reinstated the failed policy of catch and release. And number 3, ended the incredibly successful Remain in Mexico agreement. Remain in Mexico was an agreement that President Trump had negotiated with the government of Mexico, where the government of Mexico agreed that those people who crossed illegally into Mexico from Central and South America, that they would remain in Mexico while their U.S. asylum cases were proceeding. That agreement proved to be a tremendous success. So much so that last year, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. We know how to solve this problem. The very first week in office, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris tore that agreement to pieces. Said the United States would no longer comply by it, and we saw an explosion in illegal immigration. We've already seen over 1 million illegal immigrants cross into this country in 7 months under the Biden administration. We are on pace for more than 2 million illegal immigrants coming into this country. This is in the midst of a global pandemic on COVID, where we're seeing the administration releasing illegal immigrants into South Texas, into our communities with very high rates of COVID positivity. This is irresponsible, and it makes no sense. It's also cruel. So many of the immigrants who are coming are children, our family units. I've spent a lot of time down at the border in the last 9 years I've served in the Senate. I've never seen it remotely as bad as it is right now. I've seen lines of people in the Rio Grande Valley walking up. Children, 5, 6-year-old kids walking alone, little girls, little boys. I've seen moms, young moms carrying infants, nursing infants, walking along the path, being loaded into cages. Sadly, I've been to the Biden cages. The Donna tent facility, a massive tent city built with little boys and little girls packed in there one on top of each other. The rate of COVID positivity when I was last at the Donna facility was over 10%. Last night when we were on patrol, you don't have to be out very long to encounter people crossing illegally or trying to cross illegally. Within just a few minutes of patrolling the border, we encountered a group on the other side of the river, a group that had been identified as 33 people trying to cross. We could see them with their flashlights shining at us. They knew we spotted them. They weren't the least bit concerned. They knew Border Patrol was there. They weren't the least bit concerned. This crisis is a humanitarian disaster. It's a public safety disaster. It's a national security disaster. And it's a public health disaster. It is man-made. And I'll tell you a lot of what was expressed around this round table. Look, around this round table, there were Democrats, there were Republicans, there were people across the political aisle. Nobody here in South Texas thinks what's happening on the border makes sense. And I think it is imperative for politicians in Washington to listen to the people of Laredo, to listen to the people of South Texas, and to recognize that this lawlessness has to stop. And it will only stop when we have a president and an administration willing to enforce the law. As long as the Biden administration says we will not enforce the law, we will release the people we apprehend, the crisis will keep getting worse and worse and worse. And that is terrible for Texas. It's terrible for the country. Congressman Chip Roy.
Thanks, Senator. I'll be brief. It's an honor to be here with my good friend, Senator Cruz. We've worked together for a long time, and he fights for the people of Texas. And I'm proud to be here with him and my colleague, Congresswoman Nancy Mace from South Carolina. We're honored to have her visit the great state of Texas. I'll just make this simple. The state of Texas is under siege, and the good people of Laredo are on the front lines of that attack. And the question that I have for the current administration in Washington, while we're on the front lines here in Laredo, where's our leadership? Where's President Biden? Where's Vice President Harris? Where is Secretary Mayorkas? They're not here. We're here. We're here to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people here in Laredo who are dealing with this crisis on a daily basis. It's an honor to be here with the chief, the judge, the mayor, and the people here that are working on behalf of the people of Laredo and the people of Texas. I want to know where our leadership in Washington is to come here and talk to the mom or dad who have lost a loved one at the hands of the violent cartels. The only jobs program that the current president has in place are creating jobs for the cartels. I just stole that line from the judge. Because it's true. That's what we're facing. That's what's happening right now. I want to know where the president is in talking to the mom who just lost a loved one or child to fentanyl, to overdoses, human trafficking, sex trafficking. This is what's happening in our communities. This is what's happening right now. I represent Austin and San Antonio in the Hill Country. We're feeling it in San Antonio. We had an event in Boerne, Texas yesterday because we're seeing precisely what's happening in Boerne, where we've got trafficking coming in through I-10, traffic coming up 281, traffic coming up I-35 out to Austin. So again, my question is, where's the president? Where's the president's administration? We're here.
I have about 60 seconds, but I want to thank the mayor, I want to thank the chief of police and the border patrol agents that we spent the last 24 hours with. This is my first official visit to the border, and the toughest job in America today is any man and woman that serves in uniform, from our border patrol agents to our local law enforcement to our soldiers who are serving here and abroad and overseas. I was shocked by what I saw at the border. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is an American issue. And the longer that we wait to secure our border, the more money that the cartels in Mexico will amass, the more drugs that will come across the border, the more human trafficking in places like my hometown of Goose Creek, South Carolina, where we have human trafficking and sex trafficking, we have the opioid crisis. We're seeing these problems along the border, on the front lines here, trickle into every city in America. And I want to thank everyone for their time and the education. I wish every member of Congress, Republican and Democrat, would come down here and see the crises facing our nation today. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. I'm so grateful also to have the senator and, of course, the congressional members here with us. They're willing to listen. They did listen to a lot of the concerns that we have. And, of course, this is not new. It's been ongoing for months now, and they are correct. We impressed on them the fact that the border needs securing, that the border is in crisis. And yes, we have this humanitarian crisis as well as the border run, we here locally are experiencing and have been experiencing stash home crisis in a way. So they know what Laredo has been facing for months now. But Laredo is just a portion of the entire border area. And I can say that based on what I see and what I hear and what I've experienced by visiting, other border communities, that the border truly needs solutions and quick solutions as well. That we can't wait on these long-term solutions. Some help, some resources. Well, not some. Plenty of resources are required here in our city, and we're asking, and these, lady and the gentleman from Washington, expressed also their frustration as well as to what's going on this division that occurs in Washington as well. We have to come together as Americans and find solutions to this. It can't be just strictly Democrats or Republicans. Again, we are Americans. South Texas is very much part of the U.S. and we expect our leaders to lead and to find solutions, and that's all we're asking. And anyone else, from Washington or has any authority or power that is willing to come and visit the border, you're welcome. We're here to tell you our story, a story of need and a story of wanting solutions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's just important. We're just very much grateful for our senator, for our congressmen and women to be here today to listen to our story. I think they're very pointed in one of the questions, and the question is, where is the Biden administration? As far as here is I myself, as a conservative Democrat, that I am elected here in Webb County to serve and to help and to honor and to protect these beautiful people of Laredo and Webb County. And it's amazing how we're going from one particular county, now all of a sudden we're taking on a state crisis and a national crisis. I don't think it's fair. I don't believe we have the resources. We're asking President Biden, help us, help you. It is not a time to be hiding from the sand. It is not a time to be a partisan to a particular party. And this is not American. We've had some incredible presidents in the past. I know immigration is one of the things that we need to continue working on and pressing forward. It's important that we have these programs. We are all migrants to a certain point or another. It's not the fact that we do not appreciate the rims, but we appreciate them if they would come legally, not just open border. One of the things that disappoints me the most is that most of the media outlets, I was just talking about this yesterday, I think most of your CNN, MSNBC, and a couple of other leftists literally have played it no more than 5 minutes of airtime of the border crisis this month alone. That is staggering. That's disappointing, because people are starting to realize that the more you could hide it, the more we could we could go ahead and make everything look fuzzy. You know what? There needs to be clarity in this particular subject. And if nobody else wants to carry it, I appreciate these gentlemen behind me and the Senate and Congresswoman as well, to at least try to explain this is not just a border crisis. This is a national crisis that needs attention and needs it now. Needs it now. It saddens me that I go to an airport and I hear over and over and over again that the federal government, please wear your mask over your nose and mouth at all times because your security, your safety is our highest priority. I'm going to end with this. Prove it to us. Prove it to us. Thank you.
So we're happy to take any questions.
Senator, what stood out to you about the Laredo sector specifically, and how can you help? What can you do?
Well, I'll tell you, the Laredo sector faces different challenges than do other sectors along the Rio Grande. Laredo sector, you've got a much higher percentage of single adults crossing. So, for example, Rio Grande Valley sector, where I'm actually headed later today and have been many times, you have a very high percentage of family units and unaccompanied children. that puts enormous challenges on that sector to deal with those kids, to deal with those family units. Under the Biden policies, those individuals who are coming are all allowed to stay. That in turn is incentivizing tens of thousands of more children to be handed over to the human traffickers who are abusing those kids, who are assaulting those kids. That's putting more and more family units in harm's way there. Here in Laredo, you get relatively fewer children and family units. You get instead single adults, either single males or single females. That poses a very different law enforcement and Border Patrol challenge, because with the children and family units, they go and seek out the Border Patrol agents. They affirmatively want to hand themselves over and surrender. They show up with documents, with their name, with the phone number of someone in the United States, and they trust on the Biden administration to deliver them to wherever they want to go in the U.S. And the administration functions really as the last mile in the human trafficking network for those individuals. With single adults, there's a much higher chance that the law will actually be enforced and they will be deported. And so what happens in the Laredo sector is you get a much higher percentage of people who try to evade capture, who try to run. That also means you have a lot more violent encounters with Border Patrol agents, that if you have someone that is trying to avoid being apprehended, they're more likely to assault the agent. They're more likely to punch the agents or throw a rock or take a shot at them with a firearm. And so it is dangerous. The Border Patrol agents who are here, it's a dangerous job. You know, we were out on patrol, and listen, the agents, they're not serving with a partner double duty. You've got a lone agent sitting there in a truck along the river, and there may not be another agent for 3, 4, 5 miles. And for much of the river, you don't have roads where you can traverse along the river. So that agent can be, in a very real sense, isolated. When we were down in the river, as I said, we saw a group of 33 people that were trying to cross, a number of coyotes who were going to bring them across, and you could see them with the flashlights. They were just waiting for us to leave. But it is a hard job if you're a lone agent out there, and you've suddenly got 33 people coming across, including several armed coyotes, and you're the only person on the job trying to apprehend them. They're trying to evade. They're crossing in multiple places because they know if you go get one group over here, that everyone over on the other side gets through. We're asking these guys to do an impossible task. And in Laredo, you've got, for much of the river is right next to a dense urban environment, which means that when people cross, they can very quickly assimilate and blend into the city and disappear. It's one of the reasons why a border barrier can be so useful. The administration had planned to construct a wall here in Laredo so that you slow down the time between detection and apprehension. A wall, and anyone that talks with Border Patrol law enforcement understands, a wall doesn't solve the problem. But what it does is it gives you time to apprehend those crossing illegally from when you detect them to when you get to them. If you don't have a wall, if you're talking a matter of seconds before they disappear into the city, it becomes nearly impossible to carry out their job. And so, you know, I will say the folks in Laredo are dealing with massive challenges. And in terms of the city, the impact on crime, the impact, the chief told us about multiple homicide investigations here in Laredo, directed at individuals connected to the cartels. That makes the people of Laredo a lot less safe when you have the kind of cartel activity we're seeing from Mexico crossing over here. That makes Laredo less safe. We also heard from the mayor about the incredible burden on the healthcare system, on the shortage of ICU beds, because you've got so many illegal immigrants with COVID that we're seeing COVID being spread. And that's putting an enormous burden on the healthcare system for everyone else in Laredo. So it isn't fair that South Texas pays such a big price for this crisis, particularly a man-made crisis created by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's not fair that the taxpayers of Laredo are stuck with the bill. I'm fighting for that to be corrected, but right now, in Washington, this administration is not interested in solving the problem.
So what solutions can you provide?
Well, we actually know the solutions. We don't have to speculate about them because last year we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. So it's not complicated. We should ask what was working last year that we stopped doing this year that produced the crisis. And the single biggest step was the Remain in Mexico agreement with Mexico. That was the piece that when President Trump negotiated with Mexico, when the government of Mexico agreed, we saw the numbers drop precipitously. The answer is simple. Re-enter the Remain in Mexico agreement and end catch and release. You know, I gotta say, as you spend time with Border Patrol agents, and I've spent a lot of time with Border Patrol agents out in the field, these guys are frustrated. And you want to talk about a hard job. You sign up to defend your country. You do it because you love your country, because you want to make a difference. And you're risking your lives. You're encountering human traffickers, drug traffickers, dangerous, violent criminals. You're risking your life. You don't know on any given night if you're going to come home in the morning and see your spouse, see your kids. And then you apprehend someone, you bring them in, and your political leadership says, thank you very much, turns around and lets them go. And you do it again tomorrow, and you do it again the next day. Look, I don't know how these guys don't say to hell with all of it and just leave. I can tell you morale, you know, as I meet with Border Patrol leadership, as I meet with Border Patrol agents, I ask how morale is. The reaction everyone has, they laugh out loud. Morale has never been lower right now because the political leadership in the Biden administration will not let the Border Patrol agents, will not let ICE do its job. And so, my word to those in Border Patrol, to those in ICE, thank you. We're grateful for your service. It matters. It makes a difference. My word to law enforcement, whether it's Laredo Police Department or the Sheriff's Department or everyone in law enforcement or Texas DPS, is thank you for your service. It makes a difference. But I'll tell you, there are a lot of men and women right now who are feeling not appreciated and are feeling like their jobs are being made a lot harder by people in Washington and politics.
Yeah, I'll only add, completely agree with everything the Senator just said. Let's make this pretty simple. Enforce Title 42 immediately. Reinstate return to Mexico migrant protection protocols immediately, as the United States Supreme Court just upheld a judge's orders to do. And treat cartels as the terrorist organizations they are, knock the knees out from under them, stop letting them terrorize the people of the United States and the people of Laredo. Pretty simple. The president ought to do it. Where's the president?
All right, let's do maybe one more question.
Senator, I have a question. Going back to your visit to the Donna facility, you said they were stacked.
Yeah.
Were you able to have a conversation with them? Did they say that their conditions there are worse than their trip coming into the U.S.?
So, the Donna facility itself, it is a giant tent city. It is built to accommodate 1,000 people. With COVID restrictions, its capacity is 250. The day we were there, and I brought 19 senators down with me. And so we were all there to see firsthand what was happening. The day we were there, there were 4,200 people in that facility. So it was over 1,700% in excess of its capacity. The Biden cages, and we heard a lot for 4 years, every day on the news. We heard from Democrats and people in the media about kids in cages, kids in cages. What was rarely acknowledged is that Barack Obama built the cages, and by the way, I saw the first cages at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas in 2014, built by the Obama administration. And right now, today, under Joe Biden, the cages are bigger and they're more full than they've ever been. The Biden cages, you had children packed in there. They weren't 6 feet apart, as you would expect during a pandemic. They weren't 3 feet apart. They weren't 3 inches apart. They're literally packed so close together that they're side by side. There were no beds, there were no cots, there were no mats. They're sleeping on the floor. Children, wrapped up in reflective emergency blankets. They're packed so tightly there's no room to move. As I said, at the time we were there, the rate of COVID positivity was over 10%. When we visited, the Biden administration had a policy of no press. By the way, that no other administration in modern times has tried to do that. Trump administration would allow press in. The Obama administration would allow press in. Clinton administration, the Bush administration, Joe Biden came in and said no press. And by the way, the reason, and I will say to the men and women in front of us who, with the press who are asking us questions, the reason they said is because the cameramen and women might have COVID. That was their justification, is they said it was too big a risk that journalists carrying cameras might spread COVID. We had Fox News and ABC both asked to embed with the senators to go see the facility. Biden administration said no. So what I ended up doing is I pulled out my cell phone and I began taking pictures and video of what was going on, because the reason the Biden administration didn't want press there, they didn't want anyone to know what was happening. Their hope was to cover it up. Their hope is that no one would see the disaster they were creating. And I'll tell you, the Biden administration has sent a political operative down from Washington, D.C., who jumped in front of my camera, who said, "Stop filming this." She said, "Respect these people." I told her, "You respect these people. You're the one herding them in like cattle. You're the one creating this crisis. That's not respecting these people. This is inhumane." The problem with the crisis is that it keeps getting worse. Every month this year, the numbers have been higher than the preceding month. And one of the great lies in the debates about securing the border is the advocates of open borders portray their policies as compassionate, as humane. I can tell you, when we were in the Donna facility, there was an 11-year-old girl who'd been raped, gang raped, by the traffickers. There is nothing humane about having even a single little girl or a single little boy in the custody of human traffickers. You know, we've done roundtables throughout South Texas over the last several days, talking with advocates for these migrants who are sold into sexual slavery. The human tragedy that is playing out. We saw yesterday the armbands that the traffickers are putting on migrants, different colored armbands, because to cross the border, they have to pay the cartels thousands of dollars, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 is the going price in Laredo to cross the border. So they have armbands put on them by sophisticated multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprises. The armbands, the different colors, show how much they paid already and how much they owe. And the abuse doesn't end when they cross the river. Because when you have a migrant who crosses the river who owes, say, $4,000 or $5,000 to the cartel, and they go and meet up with a family member, and by the way, in all 50 states, they get dispersed all over the country. They still owe those thousands of dollars. They get located then in a stash house run by the cartel in New York City and San Francisco, wherever it is that they're going. In that stash house, the illegal immigrants suddenly have to pay the cartel rent. They got to pay for food. They got to pay for electricity. They get charged. I was told they get charged when ICE puts an ankle bracelet on them. The cartels charge $30 to pull out scissors and cut the ankle bracelet off. And it is indentured servitude as these people spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a stash house working to pay off their debt to the cartel. If they don't pay it off, their family, back in Guatemala or Honduras or Nicaragua, their family will be murdered. Cartels know who their family is, and many of them are sold either into slavery or sexual slavery. So you get a young girl, a teenage girl who wants to come to America, wants to come to freedom, and instead comes into a nightmare where she's sold into sexual slavery by these criminal cartels. And so, to the Washington Democrats who say this open border policy is humane and compassionate, that is an utter lie. Nobody who cares about your fellow human beings would want to see a single person in the custody of these cartels. The suffering we are seeing is tragic, and it's man-made.
Thanks, guys. That's all the time we have.
Thank you, Senator. Enjoyed it. Thank you so much.